Well, good morning, everybody. In this final video here of the week, I want to recap a lot of the big thought processes that Matt and I have had all week long trying to figure out where this pattern is going to go. So with that as kind of the direction I want to take this, I do have to start you off with the current setup in the atmosphere because we watched a very intense low develop over the last 48 hours. It brought in severe weather across parts of the south and mid-south. It's actually rolling through this morning, bringing in some stronger storms through Mississippi. But the bigger picture with all of this is, one, the depth of this low and how strong the wind field is around this. We've had wind gusts here 40, 50, 60 miles an hour. And then we've also have high pressure just sitting off the southeast coast. And this has actually opened the Gulf trying to deliver moisture to a place that's been extremely dry. As we go forward, a very common theme in the forecast is going to be monitoring for high pressure sitting off of the California coast. And that's going to send much of the western United States into a much drier state over the next possibly several weeks before this pattern maybe gives up this direction. It's going in early February. That'd be my current kind of thought process there. So anyways, that's our surface winds this morning. They've been quite ferocious. Now we still have wind advisories that are out for a big chunk here of the Great Lakes states, getting all the way into parts of New York and to the south. I don't like to see flood watches, but we know how dry this area has been. So to see enough moisture getting in here to prompt the National Weather Service to issue flood watches is good. Now, you remember this whole week, we talked about the separation of two waves. There's actually a pair of lows, and the one on the backside coming out of New Mexico, Colorado, getting into the panhandles of Oklahoma, Texas, and even parts of Kansas. We're going to be talking about some snow in this area, and then we'll watch for how it moves farther and farther toward the north and east out of that region in the new short-term forecast models in a few moments. We're quite windy in Southern California, but overall the west is going to be taking a break from the intense color pattern on this map, which we've seen since really just before Christmas up until lately. So big changes, I think, are coming for the West, and it's going to be critical to see how things progress from there. Back to the storms, I just want to pull up the latest lightning strikes this morning. We can see through parts of Mississippi here, coming also into Louisiana, some of our stronger storms tonight. But it was a part of this bigger system, this guy right here. And last night, this thing deepened rapidly, and it brought in some very strong storms, including a few tornado-warned storms in through this here. In fact, let me go look at the SPC storm reports. I'm going to take a closer look. Okay, here's current. Let's go back to yesterday. There you are. So 4 tornadoes reported yesterday. Let's put the unfiltered back on there. There we go. And a lot of these were in, all 4 of them were in Oklahoma, but the stronger winds that came through Illinois, Missouri, parts of Kansas as well. So the system has had a punch. And in a few minutes, I want to talk to you about maybe the way spring in severe weather may evolve. Given the El Nino transitions. We need to get into that. But coming back to this part of Oklahoma, I did notice on satellite yesterday that after the system's dry slot came through, there it is. So always on the back side, you have this, the low is way off the screen, but you have descending air from the upper atmosphere, which is dry, and it punches a hole into the backside of the system. That's what we call the dry slot. But with the winds, I just took note that over the Red River here, you did see, if you kind of just look carefully here, toward the end of the day, some blowing dust. So after having severe weather come through here and doing damage, we've now seen, the blowing dust show up as a result of that. We're approaching that time of year where we do get a lot of dust storms that come out of Mexico, New Mexico, and Texas. So we'll keep watching for stuff like this on satellite. But overall, here's the structure of this first system as it moves through. And if you notice some of the flashing that's going on here, watch it again. You're going to notice it's coming from the ILX radar. So that's the one in Lincoln, Illinois. This radar has been down for maintenance. I should have looked, but I'm assuming they turned it on to get it to capture the storm system. But if the app you were using last night, if you were in this area watching the weather and it kept flashing, that was just an artifact of the radar. So they're going to take it back down. It looks like it's back offline now to do more maintenance on this radar. Next, though, here's our next wave coming through Arizona and New Mexico, and it's going to emerge into the plains today and give us that snow threat in this particular area. So, last 72 hours, did we get much moisture out of this system? Right now, we can find that swath of halfway decent rain. And mine right here is the 0.87, 0.82, just outside of Champaign, Illinois. And we honestly couldn't have been happier knowing how much we needed that rainfall in this region. We will watch this particular spot go over very, very wet in the near-term forecast. We need to be paying close attention to that as well. But seeing where this is going to be kind of taking us, do need to warn you that today, here on January 9th, we do have the risk. Let's see if they've updated this. Yeah, they've updated this, and they're still continuing to watch parts of eastern Texas all the way to central Alabama for the risk of strong to severe storms. And into tomorrow, let's get the latest on that one. Again, as this whole system exits, we'll just watch from the Gulf Coast up into parts of the Carolinas, Virginia for the risk of some of these stronger storms as well. I do want to point out that the Climate Prediction Center has issued a moderate risk and a much larger area of slight risk for excessive rainfall today. And what's important about this is our dry spot, right? This is one of those extremely dry regions that we've been witnessing here for quite some time. So if we go back to December 1st, this is the stats. I know I show them in every video, but I think it's important for us to kind of monitor this as we go forward. Because underneath this dryness from the atmosphere, our soil moisture is still very, very low. So to be able to get this moisture in place and get it down deeper into the soil is going to be critical. Now, given how mild it is, any rainfall that came in here is going to get to soak in. The soil temperatures are not frozen, but we need to see more of this pressing through the majority of the cotton belt right down through this area. So that's just kind of a quick snapshot of what's going on with our soil moisture. Okay, drought monitor. We did get into drought monitor yesterday morning, and I just want to point out, here's the newest map. All right, we watched since December the total area tick up a little bit. Yes, California is completely drought-free. The reservoirs are full, 125% of average. We've seen drought mitigation efforts by the atmosphere happening in the Northwest. You can actually see over the last 4 weeks the improvements. But if you look across, all the locations where you see these degradation colors, this is where the atmosphere has put more ridging, and as a result, we've just not been able to push storm systems through there. These two that are going through, the one that just went through now and the one that's going through, today and tomorrow, they've been it. That's been the mainstay of getting any sort of moisture back into this area. So let's go have a look at it. All right, this is a NAM forecast right around 7 a.m. this morning, queued up for 7 a.m. And we're going to watch that boundary. Look at this. It's going to line itself out and linger here, giving us that severe weather risk later on today as the storm system pushes through parts of southern Ontario and Quebec and gives us some rain into parts of the Northeast. All week long, the models did handle this pretty well, predicting where that heaviest snow was going to be. But with the next wave, the one following, that I was hoping was going to be the kicker to this, all right, we do see that there's going to be snow coming out of southern Colorado, northeastern New Mexico, the Panhandles, and parts of Kansas. So that's why we have the winter storm watches and warnings and advisories out for that region. Now, going forward through eastern Kansas tonight, getting into parts of Missouri, we have another low that starts to form here, and this is going to be a very familiar track in the forecast going forward. We're going back over to Clipper land, if you will. And meanwhile, because of the pump of moisture still coming around that Bermuda high, we're going to keep an eye out on this region all the way through early Saturday morning and getting into Saturday afternoon and evening, spreading rain. And that's why the risk of those stronger storms getting into Saturday exists into this region. Now, with the cold air on the backside, we're going to flip this all over to snow through parts of the Great Lakes states here. And that's going to also add up more snow to parts of Ontario and Quebec, which are getting hit with the current system. But you'll take note that after this, we're going to see very few systems doing that. This is what that one did, right? Or these next two did, and it was complemented by the system out of the north. It's just going to come back to these. Lots of systems out of the north as we progress forward. So the forecast for the next 7 days, all right, this is all happening right now. This is happening over the next 2 days, and your new corridor is going to be like that. Because of the western U.S. ridging that's going to take place, there's only going to be a small corner of Washington I think is going to get the best chances of seeing some moisture. Otherwise, this pattern is just not conducive to it. So Matt and I continue to work on some new tools for all of you, and I'm going to show them to you again today, and we'll be releasing these to the public very, very soon. But let's just go ahead and have a look at it. Okay, this is just the new vector graphics tool we're trying to develop, which hopefully will be a whole lot more mobile friendly, faster loading, all that kind of good stuff. And this is what I've been amazed with. In the newest European model forecast, as you play this out here through Tuesday into Wednesday of next week, the size of the western United States ridge in the newest European model is huge. And we're getting very amplified, more north-south and west-east flow here. And what this continues to do, and the models have hinted at this for a while, is drop something down here into this region, getting just a trough. Now, we know that this is going to be accompanied with colder air as we get into next week. Okay, there will be shots of colder air. And anytime we see a big western ridge developing, we have to think that maybe we're going to start to see more sustained colder air coming into a corridor like that, all right? But that ridge and the fact we could even wave break over the top of it here, I don't know, by next Friday, the 16th, could be impressive. Now, what do you see after this? The redevelopment of the Hudson Bay Trough. And that's going to send little short waves that are going to come around it like this. And we get back into our clipper setup here over the next 15 days or so. So let's go ahead and kind of break this down and look at several different components to it. How about we go from here? Let's just go right over to precipitation type and intensity. Okay, let me zoom in just a hair. And as we play it forward in the European model, okay, there, good agreement with what we had from the NAM, with the rain as we work our way into tomorrow, and then the snow up farther to the north with a low that's coming through. There it is. And then watch the storm systems as we get out there toward Wednesday and Thursday of next week. And then getting out to Saturday, Sunday of next week. Did you see that? Let me take it back. There's just a lot of effort in the atmosphere to bring systems in through this direction. Now, at the end of that run, you all probably noticed this. There's some sort of a nor'easter possible coming out of this pattern. That is when that deep trough settles into this area and possibly works its way up the coast. Now, the model's been toying with this idea of bringing in this system. And I'm going to tell you something. We're pretty far out there. We're at a 220 to 270 hour forecast. Okay, so this is out there, day 9 through day 13, 14, 15. And we're just curious if this system is really going to show up in the models. Or excuse me, it is showing up in the models. If it's going to show up in reality. Because honestly, what I would want to see, and we do have some component of it, is you got to get higher pressure into this area first. You've got to get a trough that comes out of the kind of Arctic regions up north, but it's got to meet up with jet flow coming out, of the south and west. And are we seeing those jet stream winds? Let's go over and have a quick look at this real fast. 300 millibar winds. All right. If I just take you out there, I'm going to do it fast. Sorry about that. But there's something to this. I mean, you can get a sense of that's going to carry this wave up the coast, but that's the model being consistent with itself at that point. I will go ahead and show you, though, if we're going to look at total precipitation in form of snow using a 10-to-1 ratio, this is what we're expecting. All right. So here it is. This is getting out there to the 16th, 17th, 18th, and then that's when that system, it's really the 18th, 19th in the current model spread that it's coming through. Now, we're just going to watch it. That's all. We just need to understand that there's something out here at that time frame to keep an eye on. But, up to that point, we're out here far in an operational forecast. I should responsibly only show you this much and probably not even that. But this is what we're looking at. Take a look at the west. Out of the flow, completely out of the flow as that ridge just dominates. Now, lately we've seen some pretty strong winds, and I do want to take a quick moment to kind of just add up wind gusts. And as we play it forward here, we still have more strong winds coming into the plains. I'm only out there I'm about a week out. This is next Thursday into Friday. Look at these strong winds coming in with these systems. And of course, that's the big one taking off there off the East Coast. So if I just park this out there at about 11-day forecasts on total winds, remember with this new tool, you'll be able to put value overlays on this. We can see some very, very strong winds coming through parts of the plains, with 50 to 50 plus mile an hour gusts in this region. So we just need to stay aware of this as time goes forward. Okay, from that quick analysis with the new tool, I do want to move over to just a quick model comparison so I can show you how well these models agree on that possible system coming out of this area. So GFS left, European right. Let's just play through. We've seen these systems good. This all makes sense. I like it. There seems to be better agreement. Look, even with this system coming through next Tuesday. All right. And then as we play it forward, here's what I'm watching for. Here we go. This is Thursday the 15th. Now getting into Friday the 16th. Saturday, there it is, into early Sunday. That's when we're going to be watching this southern wave possibly create this storm system. Now, when I went out and looked at all the models on total snow, notice how it's not there yet in the, in the 7 days. This is beyond 7 days. So I went out and ran the GFS just to see what its prediction of that snowfall was going to look like. We already saw it in the European model, but let's go back to our old static maps. So let's just see there. Look at this. This is the 17th, 18th, 19th. Now look at the trajectory of that snow. in the newest newest GFS run. I mean, we're way out there in a single model run, but it's got something in here. It's not in the ensembles, though. I mean, you go all the way up to the 21st and just ask if the GFS ensemble is picking up on that event. And I want to let you know that the operational run is an outlier to the ensemble. Same can be said with the European. Okay, so if I just play it forward, let's just go out kind of rapidly. Right there at the very end, I only have these maps going out 10 days. The European goes out 15. I'm going to update all of this. You'll see all the new maps soon. It's got this system, but I'm just curious out there. Again, that's the 17th, 18th, 19th. Is it in the ensembles? No, it's not. So we're looking at some outlier runs from the models. But could the Appalachian Mountains pick up some snow? Sure. And while we're on this is the probability of 3 inches of snow by January 21st. We step it up to 6. Again, we find our snowiest corridor here, but also we're monitoring this region today, okay? And then into the northeast with more lake effect as well when the new clipper setup starts going. And that's a probability of 12. Notice that this entire forecast, the west is just out of it. And the reason I love when Matt goes through these Hofmueller diagrams. I love looking at them too. This was what made the west so incredibly wet as we went into late December, right? This is the big ridge that built into, the Bering Sea. That allowed trough after trough after trough to establish itself. Look, just run right down on the graphic to here, all right? Now, what are we doing? We're going to replace the Bering Sea ridge with a trough. And that's going to give us this sizable West Coast ridge, which you just saw in the model forecasts. And now we've got Arctic air accompanying troughs of low pressure coming around the Hudson Bay, which is going to open this corridor back up to some of that risk of going over colder. And here's what it looks like. If you just want to see it on a static map, that's day 10 in the European model. So that's why our precipitation maps are very dry for the west, given the presence of the ridge. And this region is still, it's amazing, even knowing that some of the forecast models are trying to dip that system in and run it up the East Coast because it's not in the ensembles, which is what these two outside this one and this one are showing. It's just not there, and the AI didn't pick up on it either. I'm just telling you, though, let's watch the 17th, 18th, and 19th for this region. That's what we need to be thinking about right now. But overall, the pattern is drier, and we just go back into Clipper setup, doing something like that in these forecasts. Temperature-wise, I just want to show you these maps again. This is since December 1st, looking at temperature ranks by climate district. This is now since January 1st. And as I was looking out here in the central part of the country, specifically Kansas, it's just been extremely mild. And some of the new tools we're going to be putting on Ag Weather that you can all access are going to look like this. This is just a GDD calculator. And I have it right now for where I live over in Champaign. But let's just take you over to central Kansas. Let's zoom out a little bit here. I don't know. How about we pick Hays? I'll pick Hays as an example. And as we watch this, what'll be nice about this tool is you'll be able to zoom in and see certain areas. And so what's interesting is that since the beginning of the new year, they have picked up nearly 40 GDDs. So amazed. Normally we've picked up none. That's the average, but we've picked up 40 GDDs because of how warm these temperatures have been. Now you've only got just the blocks from the new year here, but when you see the average line is here and here, we have had several days with well above average temperatures, which is why we've been able to pick up those GDDs and absolutely no precipitation. So that graph is completely flat. Again, just another tool we're going to be releasing on the Ag Weather website here pretty soon. So what are the temperatures doing today? Well, it's finally cooled off in that area, and that's where we're expecting the snow right here over the Panhandles. Very mild to the east with the stronger winds. And as you noted, okay, when we think about when the jet is going to finally give us digs on cold air here, it's not in the near term. It's out there several days. So by Monday into Tuesday, another major warm-up happening in the midsection of the country. We play this out farther. We start to see some cooler air showing up by next Thursday. Again, this would be the precursor to the possibility of a system rolling up the East Coast. But overall, we're going to have to wait quite a while for the really cold air to come back. So this is the next 5 days getting out to day 5 through 10. And it's after the 19th, or after the 17th, 18th, 19th, that we start to see that colder air showing back up in that familiar corridor, which is what we saw throughout much of December. The west goes over mild, the west goes over drier. Now, our reasoning behind this is supported in several things. One, okay, the MJO is currently in like a phase 6. It's supposed to move to phase 7 and phase 8. A lot of suppression in the flow of the atmosphere, in the upper levels of the atmosphere over the Indian Ocean. So there's some movement in the MJO. And it's nice to finally see the European model pick up what the Bureau of Meteorology picked up earlier this week. This pop out to 6, move to 7, and move to 8. But the problem with that pattern is, what does phase 6 typically do? Puts a ridge over the west. What does a transition to phase 7 do? Amplify the ridge off the west coast, deepening the trough. That's what we should expect to see toward the end of January. And then even phase 8, if it gets in there, is still supportive of a western United States ridge. So the net effect on temperatures, I think, is being better resolved in the models now, that this will likely be milder, and this will be the Arctic, corridor as we approach the end of the month. This is not now. This is coming later, after whatever comes out of this region on the 17th, 18th, 19th shows up. Okay? This is the this is the GFS model. If I flip you over to the European weeklies, you see something similar, which is good to see there's agreement there. In terms of total precipitation, let's just go out there and look at the next 30 days. In fact, I'm going to do the 15th of January to 15th of February. There is a drier look, except when you come in through this corridor, I think. But drier here, drier, and then certainly drier in the western states with this particular setup. Now, to explain this setup a bit more, I just want to show you again. All right. See the ridge that's here. That's the, like the 11th and 12th all the way to the 21st. That ridge retrograding is allowing the building of a trough to come into this area. That's the deep Hudson trough, which ushers in the colder air when, it's after the 16th, 17th, 18th, that time frame. So that's at least consistent there. And then we also have to pay attention to this. We know that as we go toward the 15th and beyond, there's another weakening of the polar vortex, which will be lined up with, I think, the timing of cooler air settling into that Hudson trough. That's kind of the bigger picture there. So what's the really big picture beyond this? Well, to see that, we've got to go look at some winds. Right now, the winds look like this across the planet. All right, these are low-level winds. But my focus is right here. These are the trade winds. Now, you know that we've been predicting that these trade winds, which have been surging since this La Niña has been in place, okay, out of the east toward the west, we're expecting them to start to calm down. Even after 5 days in the forecast, this is just 5 days from now, they're starting to do that. And most of our weather forecast models, the GFS or the European or any, are bringing in this feature right here. Now, we call this a westerly wind burst. Now, you can see this here, going back to December. These are surges of trade winds which gave us that strengthening La Niña. Right now, though, the trade winds are backing off. We're getting westerly component to this, which means the signal for the end of La Niña is really starting to show up. And our longer-term models just keep it going. That's a sizable westerly wind burst through the month of January. So we said this thing was going to die quick, right? This is what it looks like. This is what a La Niña dying quickly looks like. Now, all week long, we showed you analogs. What I want to do to finish this out is I want to review the models, okay? So you saw our analog packages Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. We did it all week long. Now let's come back to the models. What you have here is the National Multi-Model Ensemble prediction for March, April, May. On the left, April, May, June on the right. And as we look at this, my eye kind of keeps finding one thing, and it's here. This is a region that, according to the models, now again, to rephrase that, according to the models, seems to be pointing toward dry late winter through spring. And I think we need to keep an eye on it very closely. This also suggests no miracle marches for the West, but the West doesn't need a miracle march right now. Okay. What about the European model? Same time frames, March, April, May, June. The European model is quite wet through the Delta, really Tennessee Valley, Ohio Valley, Mississippi Valley, Missouri Valley, but it's going to be the headwaters of the Red River and the Arkansas River that I'm going to be watching carefully because, look, model's also dry in this area and dry in west. It's also a little bit dry in the southeast, March, April, May. And I bring all of this up because we're trying to just look historically at what these correlations might look like. Now, based on research, this is published by the Climate Prediction Center and NOAA, La Niña tends to have an influence of increasing severe weather here for tornadoes on top, hail on bottom. And last year it did. We had a lot of tornadic activity in this region, and we had a lot of hail. But if we go into an El Nino, it tends to suppress in this area, which is, I think, why the models are giving you this drier signal in these areas, in both the U.S. run models and the models run over in Europe. So we stress this again to try to understand maybe where spring could be evolving, and if El Nino's influence is there, we might expect to see the less frequent side of things in the plains. That's it. That's all we can do with this. And you can't add anything else to it. It's just looking at history. Remember that these models are not perfect, not even close. If you need a reminder, last year they were predicting mega drought for Iowa for July and August and September. Okay, so and that did not happen. Okay, so we'll just keep an eye on this because I think it's going to be something to monitor. Going forward, we do need to keep a close eye on South America. I just don't have any, I'll be honest, I don't have any red flags showing up in South America. Here's the sliding 5-day window of precipitation anomaly. So it's a sliding 5-day window. And even those drier regions that we see farther to the north, I mean, look, by the time we get out there into next week, rains are trying to return back to these areas that were forecast dry. And I pointed this out earlier, but from Buenos Aires, let's kind of zoom in here, Buenos Aires over toward Cordoba, the models into week 2 are trying to go over wetter in this region. We just look down there at total precipitation. Let's go ahead and pull this up real quick. There's storms that are coming through in the models down here across the south, and it's not hot. I mean, it's summer, so it's hot, but it's forecast to be excessively hot. So we'll just have to keep an eye on what's going on throughout this part of the world as well. Okay, I'm going to wrap it up there. I really appreciate all the attention this week. We had a lot to cover. Be safe this weekend, and we'll talk on Monday. Thanks.